At my wedding, my sister was supposed to walk down the aisle before me. I wish that sentence was exaggeration. I'm writing this from my honeymoon suite, still half expecting room service to knock and tell me this was all a stress dream. My husband is sitting on the balcony, grinning like a man who just pulled off the cleanest heist of his life and keeps saying, "You have to tell it from the beginning." With the shock. So here it is. From the moment everything finally made sense. At my wedding, my sister was supposed to be the bride first. Not metaphorically. Not as a joke. Literally. She was supposed to walk down the aisle in a wedding dress, before me at my ceremony. And the worst part. My parents thought this was reasonable. Before I explain how that even became a sentence someone could say out loud, you need to understand one thing about my family. I grew up knowing I was second place. Actually, that's generous. I was never on the podium at all. From my earliest memories, my sister was the sun and I was the background noise. If she cried, the house stopped. If I cried, I was being dramatic. If she accused me of something, it was instantly true. If I accused her, with proof, I was punished for starting problems. Birthdays were the clearest example. My cake was always the flavor she liked. When I mentioned I didn't like it, my parents laughed and said I was misremembering. Her birthdays, meanwhile, were themed, celebrated, documented. Mine were obligations. She learned early that she didn't need to be kind to be loved. She just needed to exist. Things got worse in our teenage years. I had friends. I didn't. And instead of asking why, she decided to fix that imbalance by destroying my social life. She accused my friends of bad behavior. My parents believed her. Suddenly, I wasn't allowed to go out. Then I wasn't allowed to have friends at all. What saved me was my extended family. One day, a cousin invited me somewhere, and without thinking I said, "I'm not allowed to go anywhere because my sister doesn't have friends." The adults heard. My parents were furious. Not because it wasn't true, but because I'd said it out loud. I was grounded for lying. But after that, the rules quietly loosened. My sister switched schools shortly after. She never forgave me. From then on, she didn't just resent me. She targeted me. She flirted with my boyfriends and then accused them of flirting with her. My parents always believed her. I learned quickly. Bringing anyone I loved into that house meant handing them ammunition. By the time college came around, the pattern was so obvious it almost felt scripted. My parents paid for her education without hesitation. When it was my turn, I was told there was no money left for me. But maybe later after she finished. If I stayed home, I'd need to pay rent. I didn't argue. I worked. I studied. I applied quietly. And I got a full scholarship. I announced it publicly before telling my parents, because I knew better than to give them a chance to stop me in private. They smiled for the cameras. Then asked me if I was sure I wanted to go. College saved me. Distance softened the ache. I started to believe maybe things weren't as bad as I remembered. Then I met my husband. He is everything I am not. Where I freeze, he responds. Where I doubt, he plans. He doesn't raise his voice. But he never lets disrespect pass unanswered. When I told him about my family, he didn't say, "They mean well." He said, "They're dangerous." When we decided to get married, we wanted something simple. The honeymoon mattered more than the ceremony. But because my family lived close together, we planned the wedding in my hometown. That's when my parents insisted on meeting him. He went alone. He came back glowing. "Babe," he said, trying not to laugh. "They made a proposal." I remember sitting on the couch, my stomach sinking. "They'll help pay for the wedding," he continued. "On one condition." Already knew. "My sister," I said. He nodded. "She wants to walk down the aisle first. In a wedding dress. They said it's not right for a younger sister to marry before the older one. This way, she at least gets the experience." I stared at him. And they were serious. Dead serious. That was the moment the last illusion died. I expected anger. What I didn't expect was my husband smiling. "Here's the thing," he said quietly. "They didn't put it in writing." And just like that, the story stopped being about what they wanted to take from me, and started being about what they were about to lose. Once my husband said, "They didn't put it in writing," something in me shifted. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't begging, freezing, or trying to make things fair. I was watching. And my husband, who had clocked my family from the start, was already 3 steps ahead. "They think they're manipulating you," he continued. "But they've actually handed us control. I should say this now. Nothing that happened next was impulsive. Every step was discussed. Every risk weighed. This wasn't rage. It was strategy." My husband went back to my parents a few days later. He told them he'd thought about it carefully. That he didn't personally see the issue with my sister walking first. That families compromise. That maybe surprising me would be better, because I hated confrontation and wouldn't want to make a scene. They loved that. My sister apparently was ecstatic. According to my husband, she literally bounced in her seat like a child who'd just been promised a toy. But then he added one condition. If they wanted this to work, they'd have to help pay for the wedding. He framed it as pressure, gratitude, leverage. If she feels indebted, he told them, she won't dare explode in front of everyone. My parents exchanged looks. They hesitated, but only briefly. Because this wasn't about me. This was about my sister getting her moment. They agreed. And that's when the months-long performance began. Suddenly, my parents wanted a say in everything. The venue, the menu, the photographer, the flowers. They framed it as generosity, as involvement. What they didn't realize was that my husband had turned my sister into the most expensive wedding planner imaginable. Whenever we toured options, my husband would sigh dramatically and say things like, "It's a shame. This one's out of budget." Then later, privately, he'd bring my sister to see the same thing. He'd talk about how much she deserved the best. How sad it was that we couldn't justify the cost. My sister would do the rest. She'd march straight to my parents and demand the upgrade. And they'd pay. Better alcohol package. Top-tier photographer. Upgraded floral arrangements. Each time they told me not to worry. That they were happy to help. That I deserved it. Smiled. Thanked them. I let them believe they were in control. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years they'd denied me basics. Now they were funding luxuries. Not for me, but for the illusion they were building for my sister. The only real obstacle was the wedding dress. My mother insisted on one she'd chosen. It wasn't ugly exactly, but it wasn't me. When she sent it to me over text and asked for confirmation, my heart dropped. We couldn't pretend later if there was written proof. So for the first time I said no. Politely. Firmly. Caused a small explosion. My husband went over alone again, playing mediator. He told them he'd see what he could do. My sister, furious, suggested something unthinkable. She said maybe my dress could have an accident. My husband pretended to consider it. Instead, we kept scraps from my dress alterations. He brought them to my parents' house later and claimed he'd ruined the gown during a fight with me. That I was hysterical. That he needed to go calm me down. They believed him. All of it worked because of one crucial rule. Nothing was ever written down. Every sensitive conversation happened in person. Every text stayed clean. I was painted as controlling, neurotic, paranoid. The kind of woman who checked her fiancé's phone. I leaned into it. If my sister texted my husband, I replied from his phone. If my parents tried to loop me into decisions, my husband redirected them verbally. They never suspected a thing. We also hired security. Quietly. We didn't tell my parents. We didn't tell my sister. We made sure the security blended in early. Just checking names, nothing obvious. The plan my parents believed in was simple. I'd be hidden away. Guests would be seated. My sister would arrive late, walk down the aisle first, and by the time I realized what happened, it would be too public to stop. They were counting on my silence. What they didn't count on was my absence being intentional. The night before the wedding, I barely slept. Not from guilt, but from disbelief. Even after everything, part of me still expected them to pull back. To realize how cruel this was. I didn't. The morning of the wedding, my phone was silent. No apologies. No doubts. Just confidence. Confidence that they were about to win. And that was the calm before the collapse. The wedding morning arrived quietly. Too quietly. If this were a movie, this would be the moment ominous music started playing. Instead, there was just sunlight, makeup brushes, and people telling me how calm I looked. I wasn't calm. I was resolved. We arrived at the venue separately, exactly as planned. I stayed hidden. My husband moved around openly, laughing with guests, playing his role perfectly. From the outside, it looked like a normal wedding. It wasn't. At the entrance, there was a woman checking names. Nothing unusual. Just organization. Only after my parents arrived and were seated did the real security quietly step into place. No announcements. No scene. Just a line that would not be crossed. 5 minutes before the ceremony, my father stood up and glanced at his phone. I knew what message he'd received. He's here. He walked toward the entrance and told people to begin seating the bridal party. My bridesmaids followed his instructions. They'd been told in advance to trust him. The music started. The doors opened. And I walked in. The look on my father's face will stay with me forever. Confusion. Panic. He looked past me, searching for someone else. Then his phone rang. My sister. He didn't even apologize. He muttered something under his breath and walked away, leaving me standing alone at the entrance of my own wedding. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone whispered my name. A friend, one who knew the plan, loudly asked what was going on. I let my voice shake as I said, "He told me, it wasn't supposed to be me." The words hit harder than I expected. People stood. Murmurs spread. The friend ran out to check. My husband's father rushed forward and took my arm without a word. That small act, someone choosing me without hesitation, nearly broke me. I walked down the aisle. Behind me, chaos erupted. My sister had arrived in a wedding dress. Security stopped her. They told her calmly that there was already a bride inside and she must be at the wrong venue. She screamed. My father threatened police. Security agreed. Other guests spilled outside. Phones came out. Voices rose. My mother cried. My sister collapsed to the floor, kicking and sobbing like a child denied a toy. Inside, I married the love of my life. My parents never came back. During the reception, people came and went, whispering, staring at me with sympathy. No one told me details until later. When my husband stepped outside, my parents tried to blame him. He denied everything. He asked for proof. There was none. He asked why any sane person would agree to something so cruel. They had no answer. Eventually, they were told to leave. After the wedding, messages poured in. Angry, accusatory, unhinged. My sister blamed me for her humiliation. My parents demanded explanations. My husband took screenshots and sent them to the family group chat. He asked them to help stop the harassment. He politely suggested my parents might try to ruin our honeymoon next. Silence followed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being doubted. I was believed. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I didn't beg. I walked down the aisle. And they walked themselves out of my life. Then,